Hello, and welcome to the Natural State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Gustin. It is my belief that the natural state of any living organism is health, and that our artificial habitat has forced us into having artificial health problems. This show is my attempt to dive deep and learn about using nutrition, sleep, movement, relationships, and more to help you reclaim your natural state of health in a modern world and show you how to thrive in an environment that's stacked against you. If you enjoyed today's show, you can find out more details and information at dranthonygustin.com. Today on the show, I have Emily Fletcher joining us. Emily is the founder and CEO of Ziva Meditation, and she has an amazing story as far as how she got into it. I will let her explain that in the show, but she has a couple of different techniques in how she approaches meditation that are a little different from the norm and maybe some of the apps that you're used to. So sort of thinking about it in three different phases. One is detoxing from current mindset. One is mindfulness, and then next would be integration and manifesting. So there's a lot of different approaches to meditation. She takes a holistic approach and sort of weaves a lot of stuff together in a very unique way that I've never heard of before. So if you have ever thought about meditation, even if it's been a fringe thing or you do it daily, I think there's a lot to learn in this episode. So tune in, and I hope you enjoy. This episode of The Natural State is sponsored by Ned. Ned is an incredible company that makes a lot of CBD products, and you guys can probably go back to some of my episodes and realize that I have been a CBD skeptic for a very long time. I think that it's really hard in this industry that's exploding to have really high quality products that actually do anything. I tried a bunch of different CBD brands before this one, and unless they had THC in them as well, not enough to get high, but just enough to amplify the effects of CBD, I didn't feel anything until I tried Ned and then was completely blown away. I'd been using their products before they sponsored the show for about 4 to 6 months and have noticed a huge increase the nights that I use their product, about 25 milligrams, so 50 milligrams per night of the CBD. And I sleep way better. But then also the most interesting part is my HRV, as tracked by my Oura Ring, the next morning is about 20 points higher the day that I use CBD versus not. I also have not been doing a lot of social drinking as of this year. So anybody who's been following my stuff knows that I've sort of been taking the backseat to any sort of glass of wine here, drink there, to take the edge off. And the last few months, I'm sure everybody in the world feels a little stressed out. And I've been doing the same amount, like 25 to 50 milligrams, to sort of replace that glass of wine, to wind down and de-stress. And it's been pretty remarkable to pull down the edge and make sure that I can just calm down at night with all that's going on in the world. The founders are amazing people. They really care about their supply chain, their sourcing. They do things the right way. And I asked them to hook you guys up with a little bit of a discount code. So if you want to try Ned out, just go to helloned.com/AG15 for 15% off and free shipping. That's HELLONED.com/AG15. That's AG15 for 15% off and free shipping. This show is also brought to you by Alitura Naturals. When I considered sponsors for this show, I reached out to Andy, who is the founder of Alitura, and pretty much begged him to support the show just because they are the only products that I trust to put on my skin. So much garbage is in skincare products that it blows my mind. I cannot find any other products. I do not put anything else on my body other than Alitura. It's actually a lie. I use White Oak Pasture's beef tallow soap in the shower, but other than that, everything sort of pre-post around that is Alitura. And if you don't know why, your skin is the largest organ in your body. It absorbs everything you put on it. And men are less known for using sort of skincare products, but women average over 250 chemicals that are in their bloodstream from their skincare products by the time they walk out the door in the morning. That is ridiculous. I personally use the moisturizer, the clay mask in my sauna, and the Pearl cleanser. My fiance uses way more. She has a little bit more of a skincare routine than I. And the products themselves are made with the highest end ingredients that you would ever find in skincare products. This stuff's incredible. Andy himself is a testament how these products work. He's been on the podcast before to tell his story, but it was amazing. He was in a horrific accident. His face got all mangled up, and he basically made this formula to heal his scars. And he is now a male model. That is not a joke. He has incredible skin and is obsessed with the quality of his ingredients and the sourcing of them. He was just in Hawaii recently sourcing one ingredient of the many that are in one of his products. This guy goes, visits every single farm and product, and it is incredible. The quality you get here is by far the best in the industry. And so I begged him to sponsor the show and also begged him to give you guys a little bit of a hookup. So if you use code AG20, you'll get 20% off in free shipping over at alitura.com. That's AG20 at ALITURA to get 20% off your order at alitura.com. That's AG20 at ALITURA.com. You'll get 20% off in free shipping of your entire order. Again, I use the Pearl Cleanser and the Moisturizer. They are phenomenal. Emily, thank you for coming on the show today.
I'm really excited to know you.
If there was any time where I think that your services and your knowledge was best for the show, I think it would be today and right now. I mean, I think that a lot of people are going to be very, very interested in this conversation. So thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, it turns out when you're trapped at home and stressed AF, you're like, wait, what was that meditation stuff again?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a term that I have. Yeah, grew up very sort of Midwestern, normal kid of the 90s and very skeptical of meditation and things like that, of anything woo. And it's something that had sort of floated around in my conscious bubble for a long time. And then I don't know what it was. I think maybe because I moved to the West Coast, I lived in San Francisco, and it was just sort of, that was time being in that bubble. But yeah, I mean, it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And now just like the path I took into my life, like I couldn't go a day without it. And I mean, it's like been a daily habit for me for, I don't know, several years. Interested in how, yeah, go ahead.
What shifted for you? Like, since you've made it a daily habit, has anything changed for you?
Yeah, I think initially I did it is just to be better at work and be more productive and get more out of doing, which I realize now is the exact opposite of why it's actually helpful. And now it's more of being for me. And I think that, you know, I've done a lot of different meditation. I've done TM, I've done sort of mindfulness stuff. I've done a lot of different trainings, and I sort of built myself a toolkit, and I've noticed a little bit of the refinement versus the different methods that you can have. So if you do meditation one way or another, you, at least myself, I can notice different benefits as far as like a targeted, you know, if I want to relax a little bit, if I want to have more ideas, if I want to be more present, if I want to calm my brain down, if I want to be less stressed out, I sort of have a different tool in a toolbox. So that's like a meditation toolkit that I've built up over time. So that's sort of like, yeah, my experience with it so far. But yeah, curious as far as what got you into it at the beginning.
That's so interesting. There's so many parallels there, because originally I was just teaching meditation, and then I realized that, you know, the world is filled with ex-meditators, you know, people who've tried meditation and quit. And there's probably, you know, many people listening right now that are like, oh yeah, I tried, but I couldn't clear my mind. Or I did 10 minutes of this app, but I didn't really feel like my life got any better. So I just didn't, I put it in the nice to have category, not the need to have category. And so there's so many different angles we could go here, but our big thing at Ziva is that we teach meditation for extraordinary performance. And up until this whole pandemic hit, I've very much been wrapping the powerful medicine that is meditation. I've been wrapping it in the candy coating of like, hey, you're going to make more money and have better sex and be less of a dick. So why would you not do it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the gateway reason why you start. That's why I started. I mean, I needed to have performance. I needed to sort of like sink or swim. And that's where I was at. And that's why I got motivated into it. But now again, like I use it for very different reasons.
And I think that's the whole deal, is that, you know, just because you put candy coating on the medicine, it doesn't make the medicine any less effective. And so I've been very aware that it's been a gateway drug, you know, really a marketing message. I mean, my book is called Stress Less, Accomplish More. So it is speaking to that sort of like doing piece of us that certainly needs to be addressed. But it's very hard to address that if people don't shift their state of consciousness. If they don't have a visceral tool to get out of fight or flight, then you can't just say, well, just be present, just be enlightened, just relax. Like, you cannot tell a type A chronically stressed person dealing with insomnia, with deadlines and bills, to just relax. Like, it doesn't work. And so I was going at it at a different angle. It'll be interesting to see how just our whole consciousness and humanity shifts through this collective pause that has been thrust upon us. Because what I'm finding is that people are seeking out meditation more and more. Like, I'm not selling meditation right now. I'm not convincing anyone they need to meditate. I'm more just trying to figure out where you are on your journey and how can I help, because people are hungry for it. I think we're starting to realize that self-care is not negotiable. But I originally got into it because I was on Broadway for 10 years, and my last show, I was understudying 3 of the lead roles. And that means you show up to the theater with no idea which character you're going to play. So it's basically constant fight or flight, constant, I was going gray. I was having insomnia. I was getting sick and injured. And then I learned meditation. And the first day of my first class, I slept through the night for the first time in 18 months. I didn't get sick for 8.5 years after that. I stopped going gray. That was 12 years ago that I learned. I'm 41 now. I was legitimately going gray in my 20s. I'm not gray now. So it's just been like a visceral change for me. But I'd say the number one thing that happened for me is my performance got better. And so I just thought, why does everybody not do this? And I think because I had been in the performing world for so long, I pretty quickly started teaching Oscar, Grammy, Tony, Emmy Award winners, NBA players, like people who were using their bodies as their instrument and their brains as their means of income. And so the performance piece really spoke to them. And like I said, I was just teaching meditation for the first, I'd say 5 years. And then just started asking deeper questions. Why would anybody pick up the keys to the kingdom and then put them down? Like, I didn't understand why there was any ex-meditators in the world. I didn't understand how anyone could start and stop. And so when I asked deeper questions of like, well, what's really the resistance point for you? What's really coming up? Like, why are you not starting? Why are you quitting? And I realized 2 things. One, that the number one barrier to entry is that people think they're too busy to meditate. And then the reason why people were starting and then stopping was usually that they were afraid of the actual healing process. They were afraid of the emotional and physical detox that can happen when you start a practice as powerful as this. And I think because so many teachers are just framing meditation as like, just clear your mind and just feel bliss for a few minutes a day. They're almost framing it like a reprieve or like a pain pill. And like, meditation's not a pain pill. It does not numb you. It does not clear your mind. It's a vitamin. It's nourishing. It's allowing you to strengthen your brain to become more resilient. And so if people are coming to meditation, at least to Ziva, as a way to escape or to numb, the opposite happens. With Ziva, it's very much a catharsis that happens. And so I doubled down on that and I leaned into it. And I was very honest about it when people were considering taking a class with me. I was like, look, it's very likely that you're going to move through a purging process. And then I added in mindfulness elements, like to use, as to your point, there are different styles do different things to the brain. And so I added in the mindfulness piece to help people to transition into the deep healing rest that is meditation, but also to help them with the detox. And then we finish with manifesting, which sounds woo-woo, but it's really just reminding yourself of your dreams. It's you consciously creating a life you love. So that's the Ziva technique. It's mindfulness, meditation, and manifesting. Okay.
And then, is that how you learned originally? Just mindfulness?
No, I learned just meditation to start. And then I went and did I just did one Vipassana retreat. Have you ever done Vipassana?
I've not.
It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I did mine in India, but you can do them anywhere. But it's intense and it's like hardcore mindfulness. I mean, it's 10 hours a day, 2 meals a day, no reading, no writing, no music, no eye contact. You're sitting for hours at a time without being able to move your hands or nose or feet or anything. And anyway, the point of the story is that it becomes excruciatingly painful. Uh-huh. And I mean, like the first 45 minutes, you're like, oh, I'm great. I'm a meditation superstar. And then minute 46, you're like, certainly I'll have to amputate my legs. Certainly I'll never walk again. But what I realized, and everyone's Vipassana experience is different, but for me, the big lesson that I took away was that if you can manage to stop chasing pleasure and avoiding pain, you can become a master of anything. And that was the thing that Vipassana taught me, was that, because you do have this searing pain, and as long as you're trying to avoid it, as long as you're trying to get out of the pain, it gets louder and louder. But if you figure out a way to sit into it and to let it talk to you and to just lean into the pain, then what's right behind that is this massive wave of bliss, this massive waves of pleasure. And then the trick becomes not chasing chasing the pleasure. And if you look at any life, right now, this is being recorded in the middle of lockdown. And right now, it's like we're trying to avoid the pain by drinking or Netflixing or online shopping or, whatever, or anything we do to numb. And if we avoid hard conversations, if we avoid feeling, if we avoid making decisions, they just get louder. And then if we chase pleasure, like, let me just eat another bag of Oreos, let me eat another, cookie, let me have, it's this weird micro relationship, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain. And if we can flip that on its head, you can really transform almost anything in your life. So that really inspired me to add in the mindfulness element. And then the manifesting I've always been a fan of, but I started studying it more intensely in the past few years.
Yeah. I mean, one of the interesting things that you were talking about is just that, some people think that it's supposed to be this moment where you get 10 minutes on an app and it's great and it's sort of relaxing. And sort of what you're talking about as well is if you haven't gone through a lot of this stuff and you're not used to sitting through uncomfortable feelings, whether that be in your body, physically or emotionally, that it can be extremely, extremely challenging for people. And, being able to I sort of think about it, at least it was a lot in the early days for me, is more of like a workout, where workouts in general can be very taxing and draining, but afterwards you get that sort of the bliss moment, like you said. And so curious as far as what you're talking about with I've never heard somebody put it in the way you did around having an emotional detox. Mm-hmm. Is that just the phase of being able to be aware and sit through emotion? Is this, suppressed trauma that's coming up? Like, how do you view that sort of angle of it?
Mm-hmm. Really good question. And I do think there are some parallels there with the resilience that you build by moving through an intense workout and the resilience that you build by moving through a meditation. I do not think that exercise is meditation. They are not the same thing, even though so many people want to use that. Like, well, exercise is the way I meditate. And it's like, no, that's called exercising. That's why they have their own words. But to highlight your question, so mindfulness, which is, I would define mindfulness as most of the apps out there, the guided YouTube videos, everybody on Instagram Live is suddenly a meditation teacher. Now, Diddy has a meditation thing on Audible. I'm like, wow, I thought it was crowded before, but now literally everyone has become an online meditation teacher, which is fine. The rising tide lifts all boats. And meditation is a skill. And so I would just, this might be my own meditation snobbery coming through, but I would recommend that if you're going to put your brain in someone else's hands, you might want to make sure they've had some training and that you respect and trust that person and that teaching meditation is what they do. But anyway, mindfulness. The guided YouTube videos, the apps, anytime you're directing your focus, anytime you're focusing on your breathing, counting your breaths, imagining your chakras, imagining a waterfall, any directed focus, I'm putting in the category of mindfulness, which is very good at dealing with your stress in the now. I define mindfulness as the art of bringing your awareness into the present moment, which is beautiful and necessary, especially right now. So the big highlighting differentiation is that mindfulness is great at dealing with your stress in the now versus the type of meditation that I teach at Ziva is very good at getting rid of your stress from the past. So to your point, yes, it would be trauma. It would be stuff that's been stored in our cells. Because a lot of people are like, what do you mean stress from your past? It's like, well, every time you've ever launched into fight or flight, it's left an imprint on your cells. It's left an open window on your brain computer. And by the time the average adult is 20 years old, we have about 10 million of those windows open on our brain computers. And so if you were to think about your laptop right now, like you and I are recording on Zoom, if we had 10 million other tabs open, this recording would sound like crap. You'd be like, lady, shut down your computer. And a similar phenomenon is happening with our brains. If we're trying to hold on to every single intense thing that's happened to us, because that's what the left brain does. It reviews the past and then rehearses the future. It tries to figure out how likely those things are to happen to us again. And all of that is fine. It has its place. But because it's been overdeveloped for many of us, we are robbing our brain and body's ability to perform at the task at hand. And this is why I'm known for saying that stress makes you stupid, sick, and slow. And it's not to be mean. It's just that if you are wasting your brain's battery and energy power you're not performing as effectively as you could be. So the type of meditation that I teach is Ziva. It's healing that stress from your past. It's healing you on a cellular level. It's going in and closing out all those old irrelevant windows, so that you can perform better, which is, why you originally started. So what's the mechanism by which that's happening is that in Ziva, you're giving your body really deep rest that's somewhere between 2 to 5 times deeper than sleep. And we know that's happening because the heart rate slows, the body temperature cools, and your metabolic rate actually decreases, which I'm sure you know that that's the rate with which your body consumes oxygen. It's not necessarily your fat burning capabilities. So your breathing gets really slow. And so when you're giving your body this deep rest, it knows how to heal itself. And it's healing not only from the stress from today, but also all that stress from the past. And that's why the purge happens. And I'd say that's my job, is to help people through it.
Yeah. And I think that people who are skeptical about, does trauma get stored? Does stress get stored? I think that a really easy way you can think about this is yes, it happens not only for you individually in your life, but also generationally. And I think that a lot of people really discount that. But I think that for most people, they jump at a sight of maybe a snake or a spider or something like that. Why do you think that is? Why do you think humans have this innate nature to jump away from things that crawl fast and sneak towards you? It's because they're dangerous. And that can be imprinted on generations that get passed down, but that can also happen in your life. So you can pass it down to your offspring and so forth. So, how does your, what does a session look like when, compared to maybe people who are ex or current meditators who have done an app for 10 minutes or have done Diddy's recent one? Is this a several week thing? Is it once a day, a couple times a day? How long? What are people getting into if they're trying to do this?
Yeah. So I'd say one of the things that makes Ziva unique is that I'm very interested in teaching people the skill of meditation, because just because it's simple doesn't mean you should magically already know how to do it. I think that the power actually comes from the simplicity. And so it is a skill like any other. You wouldn't expect yourself to start tap dancing magically tomorrow without taking a tap class, or speaking Japanese without, taking a Japanese class. And so I train people to be self-sufficient, so that by the time you move through the training, you have the mindfulness, the meditation, and the manifesting, and you're equipped to do it without me, without your phone, without Wi-Fi, without headphones. Because it's who wants to go to their phone to meditate? It's like having an AA meeting in a liquor store. It's why would you go to the belly of the beast to unplug? So I'm really interested in self-sufficiency. And so, yes, we do utilize technology, but that's just to train you. So I'd say our most popular training is something called Ziva Online. And the training itself is about 15 minutes a day for 15 consecutive days. And then once you graduate, then your practice would look like 15 minutes twice a day. So I recommend in the morning, before coffee, breakfast, computer, before social media, you basically just wake up, pee, and meditate. And then it's you're cleaning out everything. It's you're just supercharging your brain. And also, so many ideas come in that morning sitting when I'm just oh, yes, let's execute on that. Whereas if I hadn't done the sitting, it might have taken me months to come up with that idea. And then I recommend that people do the second sitting somewhere mid-afternoon, early evening, just before you have dinner, ideally, but certainly before drinking, certainly before any sort of mind-altering substance. You want to do your second meditation. But a lot of people say that they find they need less coffee. It takes the place of their afternoon nap. They're not craving chocolate as much, because really what's happening there is we're tired and we're looking for ways to get out of the feeling of being tired. But if you just do a few minutes of meditation, because it's giving your body this deep healing rest, it feels like you've taken an hour-long nap, but without the sleep hangover on the other side. And now it's socially acceptable to do at work in 2020. So the sitting itself, though, it looks like about 15 minutes. We start with the mindfulness, which is a nice gear shift. It's a nice phase transition from the doing into the being that is meditation. And then you do about 14 minutes of the meditation portion, and then you finish with the manifesting. And it's just a couple minutes of manifesting at the end. And that's really you, like I said, reminding yourself of your dreams, because we all have dreams. A lot of us are scared to admit them. A lot of us secretly don't believe that we deserve our dreams, which the meditation portion helps with. But the manifesting is really, it's not magic. It's not just you place an order with the cosmic waitress at the cosmic restaurant and then it's all over. It's just, is your calendar reflective of your priorities? And if you make a New Year's resolution on December 31st and don't think about it again until the next December, the chances of that happening are very low. It's 50-50. We have to do our part and nature has to do its part. And to me, when you're in the meditation, it's like the right and left hemispheres of the brain are starting to talk to each other, which to me, I like to think about your left brain as individuality and your right brain as totality. So you're having this two-way conversation with listening to how nature wants to use you. That's even listening to what your true desires are and simultaneously communicating your preferences to nature. And so then it becomes this beautiful dance of listening and receiving and reminding yourself. And what I found is that the combination of meditation and manifesting is so much more powerful than either one alone.
Yeah. I mean, I think you mentioned something that like in the morning, you can have these ideas and that can guide you throughout the day. And I think that what happens, that a lot of people just don't realize, is that their life sort of dictates what they do. Like people maybe have this reset once a year and then the current of life sweeps them away and takes them wherever they want to go. Like if you don't have these calibration points where you sit and reflect and go, okay, is this still where I want to go? Am I on the right track? Have I been adjusting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, this is like a cruise ship leaving, the coast, the East Coast of the US going into Europe and never checking if they're on path again until they reach land. It just doesn't work very well. And I think that once you open your phone and you're bombarded by the needs of everyone else who are coincidentally also being driven by the needs of everybody else around them, then you just sort of swept up in this current. And sort of the same thing where, I get up, first thing I do is get out of bed, brush my teeth, then I go downstairs and I journal for a little bit and then I meditate. But I always have my notebook next to me so that if something comes to me when I'm meditating, I mean, I guess this is where it's like challenging because I know where my mindset used to be and saying like, oh, this stuff comes to me or whatever, and manifesting and meditation. Like I was the person who needed it the most, but those terms to me would turn me off the most. And so it's like, I always try to think about positioning it for old skeptical me. But yeah, I mean, even if it's letting your brain have space to have your own original thoughts and ideas come to the surface, like I want to capture those and then put my day in order based upon that instead of everybody else's expected needs and wants via email, text messages, Slack messages, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. And it's probably why you've been so successful with your company and your podcast, because you're listening. When you do that, you're doing the important things first instead of the urgent things first. And if you read the autobiographies of all of the world's highest performers, all of the people who achieved great things in the world, the thing that they all have in common is that they started their day for themselves. More recently, Tim Ferriss says that 90% of his podcast guests start their day with meditation. That's not a coincidence. It wasn't always meditation, but Einstein used to take 20-minute naps. If he couldn't solve a problem, he would go to take a 20-minute nap, which you can't really fully fall asleep in 20 minutes. He was sort of accessing this different state of consciousness. Edison used to take naps sitting up, and he would hold brass balls in his hands. And so that when he would slip into sleep, which when your muscle tone shifts, so the brass balls would fall and wake him up. So he was basically cognizing his own form of meditation, which is keeping him dancing between the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And so he would do that every day. So it's no secret that if you change your state of consciousness, you're going to change the level at which you can solve problems. You're going to change the level of ideas that you are downloading. And so, if success leaves clues, if we want to look at the most successful people, the people who really changed reality for us, they're all doing this thing. So we might as well get on board. Yeah.
And I think that to me too, it's like the awareness that there's such a lack of stillness in the world right now, especially what's going on, which is like so ironic that people are locked down and aren't able to connect in person as much or do the things that they're supposed to do. Yep. The ability to, like you said before, go on Netflix, eat food, be on social media, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is so pervasive in our lives that it just doesn't allow for any of this stuff. So like you said, maybe it wasn't meditation that everybody was doing before. Maybe it was long walks. Maybe it was just forced stillness in our environment because we had nothing else to do for a long time. The sun went down and we, that was it. We had to be silent with ourselves and the people around us. And I think that we just were missing so much of that. And that's sort of why this is such a powerful tool. And this is how I think about, health in general, whether it be emotional, mental health, physical health, et cetera, is that, if we swing really far away from like what the natural state of our health and our being is, there's really great tools to help us get back to that point. So, I mean, if you're destroying your metabolism, eating tons of carbohydrates and fake food, eating really good food and eating low carbohydrates could be a really good tool shifting that backwards. And the same thing, like if you're lacking a lot of stillness and openness in your life for your own originality, then doing meditation could be a really great tool to help you get back on track. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't know how much you've noticed this over the years as well, but as I get better and better and better in improving the skill of meditation, I am able to take that in different parts of my life. And, not necessarily like a hard workout, but if I'm doing like a gymnastics workout or sort of yoga stuff, or even on a walk, I can bring those moments of mindfulness and stillness without trying to cram more information in my head, listening to another podcast or audible book or whatever. I think that allows me to open up more of that access of my brain to help solve more problems.
Well, thank you for articulating that so beautifully. And the thing I want to highlight there is that because you've put in so many years of the meditation, you're experiencing the beautiful benefit, which is being more mindful. It's being more conscious. It's being more present in the rest of your life. Like I want to say, we meditate to get good at life, not to get good at meditation. It's not about what's happening when you're sitting with your eyes closed. It's about your ability to be present with your partner, present with your kids, to be innovative at your job, to contribute to society. And it's very hard to do all of those things that I just mentioned if you're constantly in fight or flight. If you're like, oh no, what's out to get me? Who's out to get me? Who's the enemy? I have to survive. I have to survive. You don't have much room left for thriving if so much of your energy is spent on survival. And unfortunately, because of our food and we're not in the soil and we're watching the news and social media, like there is so much noise coming at us that it's created this low grade fight or flight that many people have been living in for decades. And like you said, it's not natural. It's not natural for us to be constantly plugged in, constantly connected. It's not natural for us to know every devastating tragedy around the world within 30 seconds of scrolling through Twitter. It's too much for our brains to process. And, they say that in 7 days, we consume the same amount of information that our ancestors did in their entire lives. And so if you think about just how long it takes for our physical bodies and brains to catch up with technology right now, and we're being asked to adapt. And back in the day, like you said, it might not have been meditation per se for certain civilizations, but like if you read Elizabethan literature, which is like Shakespearean era literature, they would talk about something called the watch. And it would be an hour in the middle of the night. So it would be around like 2, 3 in the morning where people would wake up and they would maybe have a salon or they would talk or have sex or just like sit around the fire. And that was happening because like you said, sun goes down, you have dinner, and then you go to bed. So you're in bed at like, 8, 9 o'clock at night. You sleep to like 2 or 3. You wake up, you have this hour of like chilling, go back to sleep, and then sleep until the sun comes up. So we used to sleep in 2 phases. And that little break point in between the sleep phases, you were in a very similar state of consciousness that you're accessing inside of meditation, where the right and left hemispheres of the brain are dancing with each other. And so because we had siestas, a lot of civilizations used to have a siesta midday, hottest part of the day. There's no air conditioning. So it's like, let's stop working. Let's go in and take a nap. And so that's a similar state of consciousness where you're just dancing right in between waking and sleeping. And now, because we can control our temperature and we can control our shade, we don't necessarily have those same pauses built in. And I think that's why we're returning to meditation, because we realize that we actually feel better and perform better when we take these pauses.
Yeah, I mean, like you said before, there's a lot of people who have been in that dance of constant stress for decades. I mean, you've probably seen a lot of people make crazy transformations, but how do you see some of the biggest ways that people, if they think like, oh, maybe I am that person who is in that and has been for decades, like how do you escape that sort of what looks like to be a trap from the outside?
Mm-hmm. It's really hard to give people a visceral window into what it feels like to not have anxiety and depression and overwhelm and insomnia, if that's been their reality for as long as they can remember. It's like almost like a white noise or an air conditioning is on and you can't hear it anymore because it's been on for so long, and it's not till it goes away you actually realize just how stressed you were. But I'd say the biggest transformations that we see, the most common, the first one is certainly sleep. Most people's insomnia is due to stress, because sleep is the most restful form of rest that they have. So the body And like I said earlier, when you give your body the rest that it needs, it knows how to heal itself. And so we go to sleep at night. And if we haven't meditated at all, the body's going to use the sleep as a time for stress release. And so the body's going to start releasing stresses. That's going to come out in the form of thoughts. And then your mind is racing and it's 6 a.m. and then you haven't slept a wink. Versus if you start meditating during the day, clearing those stresses out of your brain and body during the day, then your body can use your sleep as a time for sleep. So your sleep actually becomes much more efficient. Your sleep latency decreases. You find that, people who wear the body data monitoring devices, like the CEO of Oura Ring as a Ziva graduate. And so most people before meditation, their sleep looks like hills and valleys versus once you start meditating, it just looks like this deep trough. So people actually need a little bit less sleep. So even if all meditation did for you was take 1 hour off of the sleep that you need at night, then you're talking about for a 30-minute time investment, you already have 30 minutes extra in your day. And this is one of the big things I like to highlight with Ziva is that you're not spending your time, you're investing your time. And you do get a massive return on investment because it's not just an app, someone guiding you through, making you feel nice in the minute. You're actually changing your cells. You're changing the way your body sleeps. So sleep is a big one. And I think it's hard for me to know if that's just I'm attracting those people because that was my experience. But that's a big one. I'd say anxiety, just people's just overall anxiety decreases. A big one that was surprising to me was IBS. We've had a lot of people say that their IBS goes away, and I didn't really understand it at first, but then I realized, of course, when you go into fight or flight, one of the first things that happens to your body is your digestion floods with acid to shut down digestion because we can't waste that energy digesting our food if a tiger's about to kill us. And so if you constantly have that acid being dumped in your digestion, you're not going to digest food very well. And that can lead to all sorts of issues. So IBS has been a big one. People's skin issues clear up, their fertility increases. So I'm always like, hey, if you're not looking to get pregnant, you should probably wrap it up. Largely now people are just saying they feel like they're coming home to themselves. It's like they get to remember who they really are. They remember the bigness of their dreams when they didn't start playing small because of stress.
Yeah. I think that these are really good things and reasons and ways people can look at and how to quantify, is this working for me or not? I think this is one of the biggest things that a lot of the personal work that I've done in the last couple of years was really challenging for me to sort of shift to, because it's not like with work or, even if I'm looking at podcast downloads, okay, this is working. This is going in the right direction. There's a direct quantifiable outcome to what I'm doing. There's an input and an output. And I think with so much of this stuff regarding stress and stress management that in emotional, mental work, et cetera, there's not a clear output. And it sounds like you had a very direct feedback loop where you meditated for the first time and slept for the first time in years. Mm-hmm. Great. You hooked immediately. I think you're not benefiting tons of people from it. But I think that when I first started doing it, I sort of had a trust in the process. And it was a couple of years of me sort of doing it and then going off of it and then me reflecting and be like, oh, wait, I'm a little more irritable. I'm not focused as much. I'm, doing more things that other people are asking me to do instead of doing things that I want to do. And then going back and forth and back and forth. So it took me a long time. And I think that now there's just more of an awareness around all the benefits. And maybe I got focused out of it. And maybe someone else, you said IBS could be something that they improve from. Any other sort of feedback loops that you've seen that people can benefit from, or at least go, oh, okay, this is how I am reacting to this in a positive way?
Yeah. So thank you for, again, highlighting these so beautifully, because for a lot of people, they do have to trust the process. And I think that that's when it becomes really valuable to have a community, to have a teacher that you respect and trust, someone that's like, oh, they've been through that, versus just like, oh, I'm a rap star by day, but I made this guided audio by night. Because I've taught 25,000 people to meditate. That doesn't make me special, but it does allow me to see patterns. I can see people's patterns even before they can see them. So I can help people navigate through of like, oh, whoa, your detox is happening really quickly and really intensely. We might want to adjust it a little bit. Or look, I know that you're not seeing all the results that you want to be seeing by now, but here, can you look at this marker? Can you look at this thing that's changed in your life? So I can help people to reframe, because what we're all secretly hoping for is that we're like vibrating and levitating around the room and that we have 15 minutes of total silent, quiet mind. Everyone thinks that the point is to clear their minds. And then when they realize that that's impossible, that the mind thinks involuntarily, just like the heart beats involuntarily, then we think, oh, I'm a meditation failure. And so, because I can't clear my mind, I can't meditate. And that's why I'm so big on this. We meditate to get good at life. So I actually walk people through a system, both in the book and on day 2 of Ziva Online, where I have them fill out a bunch of questions. How's your road rage? Do you bite your nails? How much coffee do you drink in a week? How much alcohol do you drink in a week? How many hours of sleep do you get a night? Do you have insomnia? How are your relationships? What are your relationships with your finances? How many supplements are you taking? Like really walking through the tangible markers of most people's physical and mental health. And then I have them go back and fill out that same questionnaire, ideally 3 months later. And so even though the course is only 15 days, the process takes longer. For most people, it takes 2 to 3 months before they've really moved through those initial phases of purging. And then when they take the live class with me, I have them write it down on paper and then we mail it back to them. And so it's fun to get like a letter from your past self. And a lot of people will post or like write us and say, I don't even recognize that version of me. Hey, I stopped biting my nails, but I don't remember stopping. Hey, I just don't turn on my coffee machine in the morning. I don't remember when that happened. I used to not be able to go to cocktail parties without having 2 cocktails beforehand. Now I have like maybe 1 a week. So I got pregnant at 44, even though my doctors said I was not even a candidate for IVF. And the only thing I changed was meditation. So it depends on how stress shows up for your body. But I do think it's important that everybody takes stock of where they are the day that they start so that they have a way to accurately gauge their success.
Yeah. And I think that also people like myself who are sort of hard charging people that expect an outcome. I think that another thing that I struggle with in the beginning, at least, I'm sure you see a lot of, is having an expectation of what the meditation is going to be like, even if it is, okay, I'm processing emotions, or it is sort of like, oh, I feel this one way once when meditating, and I really enjoyed that. And like you said before, sort of chasing this pleasurable, blissful state. And I sort of let go of that. And again, just trust the process of my own body and brain allowing itself to do whatever it needs to do at the time, and sort of thinking of meditation as a conduit to opening that channel up and letting it just do whatever the hell it needs to do. And sometimes, I have crazy long, several hour meditations that are like psychedelic states. And sometimes I'm just have this rat race sort of ping pong monkey brain going on in my head. And I don't think of them as good or bad. They just are. And I think that since I've abandoned that thought of expectation, they've also like the skill of meditation has really opened up to me. I'm sure you see this type of stuff all the time.
Yep. I actually do this stupid thing in my class where I make the whole class say out loud. I'm like, a deep meditation is no better for you than a shallow meditation. And we just do it out loud like 3 times and they all feel like ding dongs. But then they thank me for it because a month later, what everyone's secretly hoping for is that the meditations are going to get increasingly more deep, more trippy, more psychedelic, that angels will be singing. And oftentimes it's just like a boring shower. It's like sometimes I really like showering. Sometimes I don't. But I shower anyway, because it's gross to not shower. It's rude. And it's the same thing with meditation. It's like every day you get stressed. Every day you got to clean your brain. And, sometimes you'll enjoy it. Sometimes it'll be trippy and awesome. And other times it's annoying and you don't have time and you've got so much going on, but you do it anyway. And that's where you're building that resilience. That's where you're starting to make a promise to yourself and keep it, which builds integrity. But you're also learning to move through the uncomfortability, which doesn't mean suffer. And this is a big distinction that I like to give to people is that, if you're going to go through any emotional or physical catharsis, you're likely going to have to walk through a bit of fire. You're going to have to bravely move through a bit of uncomfortability. That's different than wallowing in suffering, right? That's different than purposefully torturing yourself. Just like with working out, it's like, oh, I have to push myself a little bit, but you don't want to go to the point of injury. And it's the same with meditation.
Yeah. And so once you guys get through that phase and you're on the manifestation, I'd love to chat a little bit more about like how you approach that and how it is an ongoing habit for people.
Mm-hmm. So it's ridiculously simple. Basically, all I teach people is at the end, we're in that beautiful de-excited state where they've accessed their own source energy, where the right and left hemispheres of their brain are talking to each other. You simply ask the question, what would I love right now? That's it. What would I love right now? And it's simple, but there's some nuance to this, right? So you're not saying, what do I want? You're not saying, what do I need? You're not saying like, please, may I have some more? You're not complaining. You're not begging. It's curiosity. And it's asking, what would I love? When you say love, it puts you into spirit. It puts you into possibility. It puts you into present moment. And that's the right now piece. Not what did I want when I was 12? Not what did I think I should do when I graduated from college? Not what was my New Year's resolution, but what would I love right now? And that's what keeps it dynamic. That's what allows for the listening. Because just like every day you get new ideas, similarly, your desires change. And so many of us are so fixed with like, oh, well, I set this goal and I'm going to achieve it come hell or high water. And look, there's something to be said for perseverance and seeing something through. But oftentimes just our core desires change. And if we're not checking in with that, still small voice inside, then you might spend 10 years on something. And then at the end, it feels empty.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to have things change. I think people beat themselves up a lot. And I think I went through this first when I sort of left my private practice and went to start a couple of my other businesses, is that the sort of the identity investment that a lot of people make stays with them forever. But if I look back, like I don't want to listen to the same music that I listened to 10 years ago. Why would I want the same thing in my life everywhere else? Why would I have the same exact relationships, same exact living quarters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Like your preferences change, you grow, you adapt to the world around you. And so, your entire life can change as well. And that is completely okay.
Yeah. And it's like giving yourself permission for that. I wanted to be an actress since I was in fourth grade. I remember reading a newspaper on the floor of my mom's bathroom in fourth grade. I saw this ad for a place called Young Actors Theater. And I was like, oh, Mom, I need to go there. I'm going to be an actress. And I did it for 10 years. It was amazing. And then my desires changed. My preferences changed. And if I needed to stick out that goal, be like, all right, well, I'm going to like win a Tony or before I die or else, I never would have been open to this whole other beautiful world, to this beautiful career, to these 25,000 people's lives that I've been able to impact, and so it's not about not persevering, because you might manifest every day. You might ask yourself that question every day. What would I love? And the answer might be, I want to win the Heisman. I want to get an Oscar. And if that's the genuine answer every day, then listen. But if it changes, then we got to listen to that too.
And so let's say it is, I would love to eat a ham sandwich or to win a Tony or whatever. So, I mean, as far as what comes next, how do you enable people to actually realize that path?
So where this requires a level of mastery and where manifesting does become quite advanced is that the difference between I want to eat a ham sandwich and I want to win a Tony is that usually I want to eat a ham sandwich is coming from a place of longing, or what I call addictive longings, versus an intuitive desire. And this is a subtle but very important distinction, because if people do not have a daily practice, and even in the first few weeks of them meditating, it's very hard to tell the difference between an addictive longing and an intuitive desire. And for, it sounds like you and I are similar in the like hard charging type A, productivity piece. So even for workaholics, you ask a workaholic what they want and they're like, oh, I would like some more work, please. You ask a heroin addict what they would love. It's like, oh, I'd really love some more heroin. So we have to use the meditation first to find our fulfillment internally, to start to wake up our own internal bliss chemistry so that we're not searching externally for like coffee and booze and porn and more followers on Instagram or whatever it is that you're needing or getting validation from externally. We first have to break those addictions. And really only then can you trust and listen to that still small voice inside, to trust that that is an intuitive desire, that is nature using you to deliver your gifts to the world and not you trying to fulfill yourself by accomplishments. Because one is neediness and the other one is fulfillment. And once you start to feel fulfilled internally, your whole relationship with your desires changes, because you're no longer under the illusion that your happiness will come on the other side of the acquisition of anything, of any person, any place, anything. And yet you still have the desire, right? So I woke up this morning, I meditated, I flooded my brain and body with dopamine and serotonin. I flooded every cell in my body with bliss chemistry. And I still want to sleep with that guy. I still want to make $1 million. Why? Well, I would argue that the desire is there as an indicator of where nature is cueing you to go and deliver your gifts. It becomes nature's GPS. That's the role of our desires once we've tapped into the fulfillment. If we don't have a daily practice, we're not able to access our own internal bliss chemistry, then we confuse our desires as the place that we need to go to fill ourselves up. And that's addiction.
Right. And I think that there's also a level of, path dependency and action that needs to happen that a lot of people aren't willing to take a lot of times. And I think that, if I get in my car and I punch in a GPS and it says every day, this is where I need to go, I still need to take it out of park, put it in reverse, get out of the driveway, go to the drive, put my foot in the gas pedal, et cetera, and
go to the gas station.
Yeah, exactly. Take the path and do the work it takes to get there. And I think that a lot of times, there's this sort of hope that people, when they're talking about manifestation and things like that, you just think of something and it will happen magically for you. And I think there's a lot of proponents of that path. And I think that you can certainly orient yourself to that, but a lot of times you have to do the work, and the work can be mundane and it can not be exciting in the time, but it's just sort of like, again, a GPS. Like, I don't like having to take right turns all the time. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that that's not what I need to do to get there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really well said. And I think that you're right. The skeptics and the naysayers to manifesting are like, oh, you just want me to secret my dreams? Like, I have to work for a living. Like, of course, no, you have to work as well. The beauty and the brilliance in manifesting is that it's, one, reminding yourself of what the actual destination is and not just getting in your car and driving aimlessly, which is what most people are doing, quite honestly. They're just on the rat wheel and they're just going. Like, I don't really know why I'm doing this, just because what I'm supposed to, and I got to make a paycheck and I got to feed my kids. And we just get into this like have to. And we never ask ourselves, well, where am I actually going? Where would I love to go? And conversely, it's not like God's not a short order cook. You're not just like, oh, I want a Ferrari. Let me put it on my vision board. And then bango, a Ferrari shows up. You have to take action. And so some practical advice that I give to people to sort of bridge this gap between the amorphous dreams and then it becoming a reality. The manifesting piece is like just making the mental blueprint. It's like, well, first we have to know what we're going to draw out when we draw these blueprints. And then the practical tip is just take one Post-it note and write your top 3 dreams, your top 3 goals. It could be personal, professional, physical, and put them on a Post-it note and put it on your computer. And that's it. It's just a Post-it note. There's only room for 3 because you really can't have more than like 3 top priorities in your life at any given time.
Well, if you write really small, then you can have like 8.
True. I've spoken like a real overachiever. But then the trick becomes, look at last week's calendar and look at where you allocated your time. And how much time did you spend on those top 3 priorities? Because a lot of people say they want one thing, but then they're putting their time and energy on very different things. And so if you get into the habit of retroactively and proactively looking at your time allocation and seeing if it lines up, you're going to start making better decisions about where you spend your most valuable resource, which is your time.
Right. I think a lot of people would sort of scoff at that, who are busy, have jobs or whatever, and say, well, I'm in this now, I need to pay for this thing. I think that everybody has some amount of dispensable time in their day, a time where they can allocate towards something that they're not doing a great job of. And even if you can squeeze out 5 minutes a day over the course of a couple of years, that adds up to quite a lot. And I think that reflection and that awareness, again, is another huge benefit that I've gotten out of meditation, is just being able to pause, be still, and not let some sort of uneasiness drive me to the next decision or next habit or next email or next to-do that's checked off of my list.
Yeah. And to your point, it's like if you are stressed, if you are anxious, it's very hard to realize just how much mental and physical energy that's costing you. If you are not sleeping well, like that's sucking hours of your productivity off of your day. And so if you solve that one piece, you do start to have more time. You do start to have more creative energy. Your sleep does become more efficient, and nature does not like a vacuum. And so then the manifesting piece is just giving people the tools to be like, oh, how do I want to fill this extra time that I'm going to be creating for myself by getting rid of the anxiety and depression and overwhelm and insomnia?
Yeah, I think you're selling me on your course. I mean, your course. I've done a lot of meditation, but yeah, this is another tool in the toolbox, I think.
Well, I love the tools, and I also want to just give you a big shout out and props because. And look, I'm a big fan of Ziva, and obviously, but you are maybe my first podcast host where I've been like, you might not need it, and I'm dead serious about this. Like most people, I'm like, I know you've done X, I know you've done Y, but please just try it. But it really sounds like you have such a beautiful understanding of it. It sounds like it's really working beautifully for you, the toolkit that you've assembled. And if you're feeling good, then I would say don't mess with it. But if you're like, oh no, I want to kick things up or I want to experiment, I'd be happy to gift you Ziva Online. But
well, that's the type A of me, always looking to try to improve and add tools and do more and more and more, which is probably the whole point of not doing it.
Yeah, but I just want to I'm giving you the award right now. The first podcast host that I don't think needs my meditation training.
That means a lot. It means a lot. Looks like the work is paying off.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all this stuff. And if, I think that you mentioned before the show too, about a lot of the stuff that you guys are doing in lieu of the pandemic that's going on right now, which I think is amazing. So I'd love you to chat about that and where people can find more of your work.
Yeah. So the course we've been talking about, it's called Ziva Online, and you can check it out. It's at zivameditation.com/online. And something I'm really proud of is that we've given almost $1 million in scholarships to medical workers on the front lines in less than a month. So doctors, nurses, EMTs, respiratory therapists, anyone who's really helping right now on the front lines, we're giving full scholarships to Ziva Online, and then it's 50% off for everyone else. And it's just, I know Ziva is kind of a weird word, but it's ZIVA. It's a Sanskrit word that means bliss. And people can find that at zivameditation.com/online.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Natural State Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I'd really appreciate you heading over to whatever service you're listening to this podcast on, dropping me a 5-star review and your thoughts on the show. This helps us get discovered by more people and spreading the good gospel of health. And if you want to stay plugged into all of my self-health experiments, recent research and books that I'm reading and my interpretations of those things, products that I'm testing and thoughts on all things related to health, check out my free weekly newsletter called The Feed. You can sign up for that at dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. That's dranthonygustin.com/thefeed. Thanks again for tuning in and your support of the Natural State Podcast.